The reality is you have to look for the utility or the value of any investment that you make. You have to say, why are people buying Bitcoin? In reality, Bitcoin, just like an NFT is a digital version of art, we compared it to the Mona Lisa. Bitcoin is a digital version of gold.
Right.
Gold, people say, well, gold has real value as jewelry. Nobody needs gold jewelry. People like gold jewelry because, it keeps a shine, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons to love gold as jewelry. But if gold jewelry went away, the world wouldn't change.
Yeah.
And there's a few manufacturing applications, but gold has value because people assign it value. And those types of investments are called store of value. They're kind of like commodities, like you just said. Bitcoin's the same way. It just happens to be digital. It's limited by an algorithm and how many that's created. So there's a scarcity factor.
You're thinking about buying a car. Let me give you a new idea. Don't. There's so many shared ride services today, even when you have to leave the city. You can rent one. Cars cost a fortune in maintenance and insurance and just the amortization, which means as they go down in value, you're losing money. Let's say I paid $25,000 for it. 2 years later, it might be worth only 12. I hate cars. When my lease came up just a year ago on a Mercedes diesel, a beautiful SUV that was 2 years old and I'd hardly ever driven because I used so many shared ride services, the dealer called me up and said, Kevin, your lease is coming up. I've got a brand new car you're going to love. I said, I'm going to pass. I'm going to drive this puppy back to you and wave goodbye to it. And now I don't own it anymore. I use my phone to call Uber or Lyft, and they take me around the city. I save a fortune. I feel good about it. I hate cars. Even if you use a car every day to get to work, it's still cheaper to use a shared ride service because you can choose the level of luxury you want. You can share the ride with somebody else. I know people that go miles for only $8. They're taking advantage of a system that's actually democratizing the cost of transportation. Why aren't you? The whole idea is pay off your debts by not buying stuff you don't need. You don't need a car. You're working in a city where you can either take the subway or basically use a shared service. Try both. But don't get stuck parking $25,000 into a car. I don't need it. Why should you?
For us to make money, advertisers have to be happy. A lot of these like strict things they do or whatever, I don't think it's like YouTube wanting to impose it. I think it's the advertisers forcing them to. Literally tens of millions of people depend on this for their livelihood and feed their kids and pay their rent and stuff like that. I think a lot of people should direct anger more towards advertisers and less towards them, because if advertisers didn't give a fuck, like I guarantee you YouTube wouldn't give a fuck.
That's what I've been saying. Hi, I'm Mark Cuban, and I'm about to give you some advice on how to be just a little bit richer than you are today. How do you get rich? Rich is all relative, so there's certain things you need to do in order to put yourself in the best position to be rich. The first thing you need to do is live like a student. When you get that first job, it's really cool. I remember looking at cars and thinking, I want this car. Fortunately, I kept my junker. Number two, you shouldn't use credit cards. I remember bill collectors calling me every 2 minutes. You're better off using a debit card when you need to just not use cash. Number three is save up 6 months' income. If you don't like your job at some point, or you get fired, or you have to move, or something goes wrong, you're going to need at least 6 months' income. Then what I would do is probably put it into the cheapest SPX, Standard & Poor's mutual fund that I could find. If you're a true adventurer and you really want to throw the Hail Mary, you might take 10% and put it in Bitcoin or Ethereum. But if you do that, you've got to pretend you've already lost your money.
Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day.
You have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up.
It's very rewarding when you work on something you think is going to make a big difference,
And yeah, it's a little bit harder, but I think the passion that one might bring with it brings so much more energy to that.
Failure is pretty much guaranteed. Success is not guaranteed by any means, but failure is much more likely if you don't love what you're doing.
When it comes to changing the world, what I learned from Steve Jobs is if you believe in a Macintosh, if you believe in iPhone, iPod, iPad, if you believe enough, then you will see it.
Don't necessarily think that you have to have the home run and the huge Apple computer on your first start. I spent a long time in my life with skills just building little devices for fun.
Now, one other tip I'll give you is I don't own a debit card. I've never owned one. I've never allowed my three. Certainly and truly the worst financial tool ever given to the American consumer. How would I remove 99.9% of my personal liability? I use the safest form of payment that exists on the face of the earth, and that is a credit card. Credit card. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover Card. Not debit credit, but credit card. Every day of my life, I spend their money. I don't spend my money. My money sits in a money market account. It earns interest. Actually, nobody knows where it is because it's not exposed to anybody to find it. It's just sitting there.
We sell the company, and I don't remember the exact price of Yahoo stock. It was like $250. From my perspective, I don't see the stock market just going up forever. I mean, literally, the NASDAQ just passed 5,000, which is where it was back then in 2000. And I, like I said, I traded stocks. I had started and sold a hedge fund. And so I understood what happens in the market, and gravy trains don't last forever. And so I'm like, look, this is crazy. I mean, it's always been a little crazy, but it's getting even too heated. So I had to wait 6 months before I could hedge my stock, meaning buy an offset in case it went down. So I literally took every penny I had, 20-some million dollars in cash. I bought a put on an index against the entire market. And that put was for 6 months, knowing that it got me to the point where I could hedge all my Yahoo stock, and in case, but if the market crashed prior to that, I was as good as I could be.